My own sister totally ruined my perfect wedding dress, but my revenge was so incredibly sweet and utterly unexpected. Hello everyone, I need to vent and maybe get some advice, or just hear that I am not crazy because my family is making me feel like I am. My name is Kaylee, and I am 28 years old. My fiancé, Aaron, is 30. We have been together for 6 years and engaged for 1. My younger sister, Madison, is 25. We have always had a typical sister relationship, some rivalry, some jealousy, but overall we were close, or so I thought. Apparently, I was very, very wrong. Aaron and I are getting married next month. We have been planning this wedding for over a year, and it has been stressful but also really exciting. We picked a beautiful venue, sent out invitations, and I found the perfect dress. Everything was coming together, and I was genuinely happy. That is until my sister decided to throw a massive wrench into everything. Madison has always been a little bit competitive with me, especially when it comes to attention from our parents. I am the older sister, and I always felt like I had to pave the way, and Madison kind of just coasted. She was always the baby of the family, and she definitely played that card. If I got a good grade, she needed to get a better one. If I got a new car, she needed a nicer one. It was always something. I usually just brushed it off because, honestly, it was exhausting to keep up with. I just figured it was her personality and tried not to let it bother me too much. But this wedding, oh boy, this wedding really set her off. From the moment Aaron proposed, Madison's behavior started to shift. It started subtly, little comments here and there. For example, when I showed her my engagement ring, she said, "Oh, it's nice, are you sure it's real?" I just laughed it off and said, "Of course it's real, Aaron wouldn't get me a fake ring." But then she kept pushing, saying things like, "It just doesn't sparkle as much as I thought it would." Or, "Are you sure it's the right size for your finger?" It was weird, but I chalked it up to her being Madison and tried to ignore it. Then came the wedding dress shopping. I was so excited to go dress shopping with my mom and Madison. I envisioned it being this fun, girly day where we would all ooh and ah over dresses, and I would find the perfect one, and we would all cry happy tears. Well, it was not quite that Hallmark movie moment. My mom was great, she was supportive and excited, but Madison was off. She was quiet, almost sullen, and didn't really engage much. When I tried on dresses, she would give very minimal feedback, usually just a shrug or a "it's okay." Nothing enthusiastic, nothing helpful. It was a bit of a bummer, but I was still determined to enjoy the experience. I finally found my dress at the third bridal shop we went to. It was perfect. A beautiful ivory lace-lined dress with delicate beading and a long train. As soon as I put it on, I knew it was the one. I came out of the dressing room, and even Madison had to admit it looked good. She said, "Yeah, it's actually really pretty," which, coming from her, was high praise. My mom teared up and I felt like a princess. We bought the dress right then and there, and I was so happy. I couldn't wait to wear it on my wedding day. The dress was stored at the bridal shop for alterations and safekeeping until closer to the wedding. I would go in for fittings every few weeks, and each time I saw it, I fell in love with it all over again. Everything was going smoothly, or so I thought. About 2 weeks ago, I got a call from the bridal shop. The owner sounded really flustered and upset. She said, "Kaylee, I am so sorry to have to tell you this, but there has been an accident with your wedding dress." My heart dropped. I asked what kind of accident. She hesitated for a moment and then said there was a spill, a really bad spill, on your dress. I was in shock. A spill? What kind of spill could ruin a wedding dress? I asked her to explain, and she said, "It looks like someone spilled red wine all over the bottom of your dress. And it's really bad. It soaked through several layers of fabric and it stained beyond repair." I was speechless. Red wine. On my wedding dress, how could this happen? The bridal shop owner was profusely apologetic. She said they were investigating, but they had no idea how it happened. She offered to try and clean it, but she said honestly, it looked hopeless. She said she would call around to see if they had any similar dresses in stock that I could buy off the rack, but she wasn't optimistic. She was so sorry and said they would, of course, refund me for the dress and try to make things right. I hung up the phone and I just started to cry. My wedding dress. Ruined by red wine. It felt like a nightmare. I called Aaron, sobbing, and told him what happened. He was so upset for me. He came right over and we just sat on the couch trying to process what had happened. It felt surreal. Who spills red wine on a wedding dress? And how does that even happen in a bridal shop? The next day, I went to the bridal shop to see the damage for myself. It was even worse than I imagined. The bottom half of the dress was completely saturated with red wine. It looked like a murder scene. The lace was stained a deep, ugly pinkish red, and the delicate beading was dulled and discolored. It was truly ruined. There was no saving it. I just stood there staring at it, tears streaming down my face. It was more than just a dress. It was my wedding dress. The dress I was going to wear when I married the love of my life, and now it was destroyed. The bridal shop owner was there, and she was so kind. She gave me a big hug and said again how sorry she was. She had already started calling other bridal shops in the area to see if they had anything similar in my size. She said she would do everything she could to help me find a new dress. But honestly, I felt defeated. The thought of starting the dress search all over again was exhausting and overwhelming, and I was running out of time. My wedding was only a month away. I went home feeling completely heartbroken. I told my mom and Madison what had happened. My mom was just as upset as I was. She couldn't believe it. She kept saying, "How could this happen? It's unbelievable." Madison, on the other hand, was strangely quiet. She gave me a hug and said, "Oh, Kaylee, I'm so sorry. That's awful." But her voice sounded flat. Almost like she didn't really care. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was too upset about the dress to really analyze Madison's reaction. Over the next few days, I went into damage control mode. I went to several bridal shops, trying to find a dress off the rack. It was stressful and disappointing. Nothing felt quite right. Everything was either too expensive, the wrong style, or didn't fit properly. I was starting to panic. My wedding was getting closer and closer, and I had no dress. I was beginning to think I might have to get married in a pantsuit. Okay, maybe not a pantsuit, but the thought of not having a beautiful wedding dress was really upsetting me. Then, a few days later, something really strange happened. I was at my parents' house for dinner. We were all sitting around the table, talking about the wedding, and my mom was still lamenting about the dress. She said, "I just can't believe someone spilled red wine on Kaylee's dress. It's just so careless." And then out of nowhere, Madison started to laugh. Not a chuckle, but a full-on, slightly hysterical laugh. My mom and I both stared at her, confused. My mom asked Madison, "What's so funny?" Madison just kept laughing, and then she said, "Oh, nothing, it's just red wine. On a wedding dress, it's just so ironic." Her laughter sounded forced and a little bit manic. It was really weird. I frowned at her and said, "Madison, it's not funny. My wedding dress is ruined. This is a really big deal to me." She stopped laughing abruptly and her face turned serious. She looked at me and she said, "Well, maybe you shouldn't make such a big deal about a dress then. It's just a dress, Kaylee. It's not the end of the world." I was taken aback. Just a dress, to her maybe. But to me it was so much more than that. I said, "Madison, you know how much this wedding means to me, and the dress was a big part of it. Why are you being so insensitive?" She shrugged and said, "I'm just saying it's not like your life is over. You'll find another dress. Get over it." Her words stung. She was being incredibly dismissive and unsympathetic. I started to get really suspicious. Her reaction was just too strange. It was like she was almost enjoying my misfortune. Later that evening after dinner, I was helping my mom clear the table. Madison had already gone upstairs to her room. My mom turned to me and said, "Kaylee, did Madison seem a little off to you tonight?" I said, "Yes." She was acting so weird about the dress. It was like she was laughing at me. My mom nodded and said, "I know, it was very strange. And you know, she's been acting a little strange in general lately. She's been really withdrawn and quiet. I wonder if something is going on with her." I said, "Mom, I don't know what's going on with her, but I have a really bad feeling about this whole dress situation." Madison's reaction was just too weird. It's like she knows something she's not telling me. My mom said, "Well, what do you think happened to your dress? Do you think it was really an accident?" I said, "Mom, I don't know what to think, but something feels really off. I just have this nagging feeling that Madison might have something to do with it." My mom looked shocked. She said, "Madison, you think Madison ruined your dress?" "Oh, Kaylee, surely not. Why would she do that?" I said, "Mom, I don't know why, but her behavior tonight was just so suspicious, and you know how competitive she can be. Maybe she's jealous of the wedding or something." My mom was still skeptical, but I could tell I had planted a seed of doubt in her mind. She said, "Well, I suppose it's possible. Madison has been acting strangely. But I just can't imagine her doing something so malicious." After I went home that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that Madison was involved in the dress incident. Her reaction was just too bizarre. And the more I thought about it, the more things started to click into place. Madison has always been jealous of me. She has always wanted to be the center of attention. And now, I was getting married and all the attention was on me. Maybe she couldn't handle it. Maybe she did something to sabotage my wedding, to take the focus off of me. And what better way to do that than to ruin my wedding dress? It sounded crazy, I know, but the more I thought about it, the more plausible it seemed. I decided I needed to do some investigating. I started by calling the bridal shop again. I asked to speak to the owner, and I explained my suspicions about my sister. I asked her if there was any way to check the security cameras to see who was in the dress storage area around the time the spill happened. The bridal shop owner was hesitant at first. She said she didn't want to accuse anyone without proof, but she understood my concerns. She agreed to check the security footage, but she warned me that the cameras weren't always perfectly positioned and there might be blind spots. She said she would review the footage and call me back if she found anything. The next day, I was on pins and needles, waiting for a call from the bridal shop. I kept replaying Madison's weird behavior in my head, trying to make sense of it. I thought about all the times she had been competitive and jealous in the past, and I started to realize that maybe I had underestimated the depth of her jealousy. Maybe it wasn't just harmless sibling rivalry. Maybe it was something darker, something more destructive. Later that afternoon, my phone rang. It was the bridal shop owner. Her voice sounded different this time, more serious. She said, "Kaylee, I reviewed the security footage, and well, you're not going to believe this." My heart started to race. I asked, What did you see?" She said, "I saw someone go into the dress storage area around the time of the incident." "And it was your sister, Madison," I gasped. Madison, it was her. I couldn't believe it. But at the same time, a part of me wasn't surprised. It confirmed my worst suspicions. The bridal shop owner continued. She was in there for about 10 minutes. "And then I saw her carrying a glass of red wine, Kaylee, into the dress storage area. And then a few minutes later she came out and she didn't have the glass anymore." I was stunned, speechless. Madison had done it. She had deliberately ruined my wedding dress. I asked the bridal shop owner, "Are you absolutely sure it was her?" She said, "Yes, Kaylee, I am positive. The camera angle wasn't perfect, but I zoomed in, and it's definitely Madison. There's no doubt about it." She said she had saved the security footage and would give me a copy if I wanted it. I thanked her profusely and told her I would be right over to pick it up. I hung up the phone, and I just sat there for a moment, trying to process what I had just heard. My own sister had intentionally ruined my wedding dress, the dress I loved, the dress I was going to wear on my wedding day. She had done it out of jealousy, out of spite, out of pure malice. I was beyond angry. I was furious. I felt betrayed and hurt and just devastated. I drove to the bridal shop and picked up the security footage. I watched it as soon as I got home, and there she was, Madison, sneaking into the dress storage area with a glass of red wine in her hand. She looked around furtively, like she was making sure no one was watching. Then she disappeared behind a rack of dresses. A few minutes later, she emerged, empty-handed, and hurried out of the room. The video was grainy, but there was no mistaking it. It was Madison, my own sister, the person who was supposed to be happy for me, to support me, to be there for me. She had deliberately tried to sabotage my wedding. I was shaking with rage. I wanted to confront her right then and there. But I decided to calm down and think about how I wanted to handle this. I knew I couldn't just let this go. Madison needed to be held accountable for what she had done. But I also wanted to make sure I handled it in a way that would be satisfying and maybe, just maybe, teach her a lesson. I decided to talk to my mom first. I knew she would be shocked and upset, but I needed her support. I called her and asked her to come over. When she arrived, I sat her down and told her everything. I told her about my suspicions, about calling the bridal shop, and about the security footage. I showed her the video. My mom watched it in stunned silence. As the video played, her face went from disbelief to shock to anger. When it was over, she just sat there, shaking her head. She said, "Oh, Kaylee, I can't believe it. Madison, I don't understand. Why would she do something like this?" I said, "Mom, I think it's jealousy. She's always been jealous of me, and I think she just couldn't handle seeing me get married and be happy." My mom sighed and said, "I know she's always been competitive, but I never thought she would do something so cruel. This is beyond anything I could have imagined." She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears, and said, "I am so sorry, Kaylee. I am so sorry. This is just awful." I said, "Mom, it's not your fault. It's Madison's fault. And I don't know what to do. I'm so angry, but I also don't want to create a huge family drama right before my wedding." My mom said, "No, you're right. We need to handle this carefully. But Madison needs to know that this is not okay. She can't just get away with this. We talked for a long time about what to do. We considered confronting Madison directly, but we were worried about how she would react. We thought about telling our dad, but we weren't sure if he would believe us. He always tends to side with Madison because she's the younger one. Finally, we came up with a plan. We decided that we wouldn't confront Madison directly, at least not yet. Instead, we would gather more information and evidence. We would try to figure out exactly why she did it and what her motivations were. And then, we would come up with a plan to expose her and make her pay for what she had done. We wanted to make sure our revenge was sweet, but also subtle. We didn't want to ruin my wedding, but we definitely wanted to make sure Madison didn't get away with her sabotage. Over the next few days, my mom and I started to do some digging. We talked to some of Madison's friends, trying to get some insight into her state of mind. We also looked through her social media, trying to see if there were any clues there, and we discovered something that made everything make sense. We found out that Madison had recently broken up with her boyfriend. And not just any boyfriend, but her boyfriend of 3 years, the guy she thought she was going to marry. Apparently, he had broken up with her out of the blue, and she was completely heartbroken and devastated. Suddenly, Madison's behavior started to make a lot more sense. She wasn't just jealous of my wedding, she was also deeply unhappy and insecure about her own life. Seeing me get married, seeing me happy and in love, was probably a painful reminder of what she had lost and what she didn't have. It didn't excuse her behavior, but it did help to explain it. She was acting out of pain and jealousy and desperation. With this new information, we refined our plan. We decided that instead of just exposing Madison and making her look bad, we would try to use this situation to help her. We realized that she wasn't just being malicious, she was also hurting. And maybe, just maybe, if we handled this the right way, we could help her to see the error of her ways and start to heal. But we still wanted revenge. Oh, we definitely wanted revenge. But we wanted it to be constructive revenge, if that makes sense. My wedding rehearsal dinner was scheduled for the Friday night before the wedding. We decided that would be the perfect time to execute our plan. We knew Madison would be there, and we knew that all of our family and friends would be there too. It would be the perfect audience for our little performance. On the day of the rehearsal dinner, I was a nervous wreck. I was still heartbroken about my dress, even though the bridal shop had been amazing and helped me find a beautiful new dress off the rack. It wasn't the same dress, but it was still beautiful, and I was grateful to have something to wear. But the whole dress drama had cast a shadow over the wedding preparations, and now we were about to confront Madison, and I had no idea how she would react. At the rehearsal dinner, Madison was acting normal. Maybe a little quieter than usual, but otherwise she seemed fine. She was polite, she smiled, she made small talk. You would never know that she had secretly sabotaged my wedding dress just a few weeks earlier. It was almost unsettling how well she was pretending. During dinner, my dad stood up to make a toast. He said some nice things about Aaron and me, about our relationship, and about how happy he was for us. Then he said, "And now, I would like to invite Kaylee to say a few words." I stood up, took a deep breath, and walked to the front of the room. I looked out at all of our family and friends, and I started to speak. I said, "Thank you, Dad, and thank you all for being here tonight. Aaron and I are so happy to celebrate with all of you. As you know, planning a wedding can be stressful, but it's also been so exciting and rewarding. And I have to say, I have been so incredibly touched by the love and support we have received from all of you. Especially from my family. My mom has been an absolute rock throughout this whole process, and I don't know what I would have done without her. And my sister Madison has also been, well, she's been interesting." I paused and looked directly at Madison. She was sitting at a table across the room, and she looked back at me, a slight frown on her face. I continued, "You know, planning a wedding is full of surprises. Some good, some not so good. And we've definitely had our share of surprises. Like, for example, the surprise of my wedding dress being accidentally ruined just a few weeks before the wedding." I said the word accidentally with heavy emphasis. A few people in the room gasped. Madison's eyes widened and her face started to pale. I continued, "Yes, it was quite a shock. I was devastated, of course, but you know what? Sometimes bad things happen for a reason. And sometimes, when bad things happen, you learn a lot about the people around you. You learn who your true friends are, who you can count on, and who, well, who maybe isn't quite as supportive as you thought they were." I paused again and took another deep breath. I could feel everyone in the room watching me, their eyes wide with anticipation. I said, And in this case, I learned something very interesting. I learned that accidents aren't always accidents. And sometimes when something bad happens, it's not an accident at all. Sometimes it's intentional. I let that word hang in the air for a moment. Madison was now completely white, and she was staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. I continued, yes, intentional. As in, someone deliberately did it. Someone deliberately ruined my wedding dress. And you know what's even more interesting? I know who did it. I know exactly who ruined my wedding dress. I paused again for dramatic effect. Then I turned and looked directly at Madison, and in a clear, loud voice I said, Madison, I know you ruined my wedding dress. The room went completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. Everyone was staring at Madison, waiting for her reaction. Madison just sat there, frozen, her face ashen. She didn't say a word. She didn't move. She just stared at me, her eyes filled with shock and fear. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, my mom stood up. She walked over to Madison, put her hand on her shoulder and said, Madison, is this true? Did you ruin Kaylee's dress? Madison still didn't say anything. She just shook her head slowly, her eyes welling up with tears. My mom said, Madison, please tell us the truth. Did you do this? Madison finally found her voice. It was barely a whisper, but we could all hear it. She said, yes, I did it. I ruined her dress. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. People were shocked, horrified, and completely bewildered. My dad looked like he was about to have a heart attack. He said, Madison, why would you do such a thing? Madison started to cry. Tears streamed down her face as she stammered, I don't know. I was jealous. I was so jealous of Kaylee. She's getting married and everything is going so well for her and my life is a mess. I snapped. I didn't mean to ruin her whole wedding. I just wanted to hurt her a little bit, to make her feel bad like I feel bad. She sobbed uncontrollably. It was a pathetic, messy display. But honestly, I didn't feel sorry for her, not one bit. I felt angry and disgusted. She had deliberately tried to ruin my wedding, and now she was crying and playing the victim. It was pathetic. My mom hugged Madison, trying to comfort her. My dad was still in shock, but he was also clearly angry. He said, Madison, this is unacceptable. What you did is unforgivable. You deliberately sabotaged your own sister's wedding. How could you do such a thing? Madison just kept crying and apologizing. She said she was sorry, she didn't mean to, she regretted it, she would do anything to make it right. I stepped forward and said, Madison, sorry isn't good enough. You ruined my wedding dress. You caused me weeks of stress and heartache. You almost ruined my wedding. And you did it out of pure jealousy and spite. That's not something you can just apologize for and expect everything to be okay. I continued, you know what, Madison? I actually feel sorry for you. You are so consumed by jealousy and negativity that you would actually try to hurt your own sister on her wedding day. That's just sad and pathetic, and frankly, I'm embarrassed to be related to you. I turned to my parents and said, Mom, Dad, I think Madison needs to leave. I don't want her here tonight. And frankly, I don't want her at the wedding either. My dad looked at me, his face still pale and shocked. He said, Kaylee, are you sure? That's a big decision. I said, Dad, I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I do not want Madison at my wedding. She tried to ruin it and I don't want her to be a part of it. My mom looked at Madison, her face filled with disappointment. She said, Madison, I think Kaylee is right. Maybe it's best if you go home. We'll talk about this later. Madison didn't argue. She just nodded, stood up and walked out of the room, still sobbing. My dad followed her out, presumably to drive her home. My mom stayed behind, looking heartbroken and embarrassed. The rehearsal dinner was effectively ruined. The atmosphere was heavy and awkward. People were whispering and staring. It was a disaster. I felt terrible. I hadn't wanted to create a scene, but I felt like I had no choice. Madison's actions were just too egregious to ignore. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I looked at Aaron, who was standing beside me, looking supportive and understanding. I said, I'm so sorry, Aaron. This is not how I wanted tonight to go. He put his arm around me and said, It's okay, Kaylee. You did the right thing. Madison deserved to be called out, and your real family and friends are here for you, and that's what matters. He was right. Despite the drama, I was surrounded by love and support. My mom came over and gave me a big hug. She said, Kaylee, I am so proud of you. You handled that situation with so much grace and strength. Madison was completely out of line, and you were right to stand up for yourself. I'm so sorry she did this to you. I said, It's okay, Mom. It's not your fault. We'll get through this. And we will still have a beautiful wedding even without Madison there. And you know what? We did. The wedding day was perfect. The sun was shining, the venue was beautiful, and I felt like a princess in my new dress. Madison was not there, of course, and honestly I didn't miss her at all. In fact, it was kind of nice not having her negativity around. The ceremony was beautiful, the reception was a blast, and Aaron and I were so happy. It was everything I had ever dreamed of and more. And the best part? The revenge. Oh, the revenge was sweet. You see, Madison had always dreamed of being a bridesmaid in my wedding. She had talked about it for years. She had even picked out her bridesmaid dress months ago. And of course, after what she did, she was uninvited from the wedding, and definitely not a bridesmaid anymore. But that wasn't the extent of my revenge. Remember how I said Madison had recently broken up with her boyfriend? Well, he was supposed to be our wedding photographer. He was a professional photographer, and he had offered to shoot our wedding as a wedding gift. It was a huge favor, and we were so grateful. But after Madison ruined my dress and was uninvited from the wedding, he was in a really awkward position. He was still friends with Madison, but he also felt bad for me. He didn't know what to do. I called him a few days before the wedding and told him everything that had happened. I explained Madison's jealousy and sabotage, and I told him that she wouldn't be at the wedding. I said, I understand if you don't feel comfortable shooting our wedding anymore, given the circumstances. I totally get it, but he surprised me. He said, Kaylee, I am so sorry to hear what Madison did. That's awful. And honestly, I'm really disappointed in her. She's been acting weird lately, and I guess this explains it. He said, and no, I still want to shoot your wedding. In fact, I insist. You deserve to have beautiful photos of your special day, and I'm not going to let Madison ruin that for you too. I was so relieved and grateful. He said, and you know what? I have an idea. How about we make Madison pay for her little stunt? I asked, what do you mean? He said, well, I know Madison really wanted to be a bridesmaid, and she was really excited about the bridesmaid dresses you picked out. So how about we take some photos of the bridesmaids, wearing their dresses, but with Madison's dress conspicuously missing? Like, we pose them all together, and there's just an empty space where Madison should be. And then we send those photos to Madison, just to remind her of what she missed out on. I loved the idea. It was perfect. Subtle but definitely pointed. Sweet, sweet revenge. So on the wedding day, we gathered the bridesmaids together for photos. They were all wearing their beautiful dresses, and they looked amazing. We posed them in various formations, and then the photographer said, okay, girls, now let's do one with an empty space for Madison. Everyone knew exactly what he meant. We all smiled knowingly. The bridesmaids shifted slightly, creating a gap in the middle of the group. It was obvious that someone was missing, someone who should have been there but wasn't. The photographer snapped a bunch of photos of the bridesmaids with the empty space. He made sure to get a few close-ups of the empty space, just to emphasize the point. After the wedding, he sent me all the photos, including the bridesmaid photos with the empty space. They were perfect, and guess who was the first person I sent them to? You guessed it, Madison. I sent her a text message that said, thinking of you on my special day, hope you're having fun. And then I attached the bridesmaid photos with the empty space. I didn't say anything else. I just let the photos speak for themselves, and oh boy, did they speak volumes. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Madison. It just said, I hate you. I didn't reply. I just smiled and put my phone away. Revenge truly is a dish best served cold, and in this case it was served with a side of beautiful wedding photos and a whole lot of satisfaction. So Reddit, there you have it. My sister ruined my wedding dress, but I got my revenge. And in the end, I still had a perfect wedding, and Madison got exactly what she deserved. Sometimes, family drama is just unbelievable. Help me out here, Reddit. Am I the asshole for how I handled this, or was my revenge justified? Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.